Hello, and welcome to the Making of Madrid podcast. I'm Felicity Hughes, a journalist and tour guide, and you may have seen my work in Lonely Planet or the Financial Times. This podcast is an extension of my fascination with my adoptive city, which began with a blog about the history of Madrid called The Making of Madrid, and it grew to encompass much more than that. This podcast is for anyone interested in the culture and life of Spain's capital. And today I'm talking with Clare Starkie about English teaching, most particularly specialised English teaching, and the Manzanares River, as she's got an excellent audio tour out on VoiceMap. So without further ado, let's get started. Hello, Clare.
Hello.
How long have you been in Madrid, Clare? I forget.
It will be 6 years in September.
So yeah. And I met her when she first arrived here. She's a very good friend of mine and very knowledgeable friend because she's a proper historian. She studied prehistory, medieval and archaeology at, was it Sheffield University?
Yes, that's it, Sheffield, yeah.
And she went on to become a curator of decorative arts at Sheffield Museums. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yes, I went to university at Sheffield and liked it so much we decided to stay. So I got the job at Sheffield Museums, I should say, it's called now. I was there for about 17 years. And I particularly looked after the metalwork collection. For those of you who don't know Sheffield, it's a big metalworking city, has been for hundreds of years, big steel industry, but also things like knives, teapots, candlesticks, that kind of thing. So we had one of the best collections of the world of that kind of thing. And yeah, I loved it. It was a great job. It was some great.
You don't want to mess with Claire because she's got a big collection of sharp knives.
I do have access to a lot of weaponry. So yeah, just to say that.
And we're here to talk about two things. Specialised English teaching that I think will be of interest to a lot of listeners thinking of making a move to Spain and perhaps becoming an English teacher. And the other thing is the Manzanares River, as Claire has made this her thing in Madrid, and she has 2 voice map tours out about the Manzanares River. But we'll get into that later on. I thought we'd start out talking about English teaching. So first off, you were a curator and had a successful career doing that. And you moved to Spain and made the switch to English teaching. So what would you tell someone who wanted to move to Spain about how do they go about doing that? First of all, become an English teacher.
Yes, before I actually moved to Spain, I'd done a couple of sort of TEFL courses online and done like a little weekend bit of training. That was really useful. And I'd done a bit of volunteer work as well at a centre in Sheffield for refugees and asylum seekers. So to actually have that face-to-face experience, I felt was really, really important. I wasn't a professional teacher as such, but I thought I wanted to have qualification. I wanted to have a training just to show people that I could do it, but also to give myself the confidence and for my own benefit. If you're moving to a foreign country, there's so much to think about anyway. You don't want to then move and do all the things you have to do for that and then completely start the career from scratch. I would suggest you have a think about before you do the move, easing yourself into it and getting a little bit of training and a few certificates. There's plenty of stuff out there to help you.
It is an option, though. I know that if it can be an economical option for some people that they go and do a crash course and then go maybe with a school that then can sort of hire them. Does that exist?
Well, I did the little bit of qualifications and the training that I had, and I came here and I did applications to different language academies. I only teach adults, I should say. I don't teach kids. So I'm not working in a school as such. I teach for language academies. So my CV went out to those. I had a few interviews. and I've been working for the same company, who are great, for about 5 years. So there's a little bit of mix of kind of trial and error and a little bit of luck as well, I would say too.
Yes, I had the very same trajectory. I think most people you meet out in Spain who've come from the UK or the US will have some experience of having worked as an English teacher. And I agree with Claire that doing the same thing, going and taking your CELTA or TEFL in the UK and getting some experience under your belt before coming here takes the stress off. I taught in Japan first, but I came there with a qualification and ready to teach. And the thing about teaching children as well, because I do have experience doing this. Do you have any experience with children?
Oh, I do. I mean, in the museum, we do workshops and we do tours, and kind of, I do love working with the kids, and it was kind of fun. And my friends have kids, but the idea of standing up in front of a room full of 30 kids every day and doing that, oh no, I couldn't do that. I don't think I have the patience. And the kind of thing I like to do and the kind of things I like to talk about is really kind of more suitable for the adults, really. But yes,
but it's a good option for people.
It's a good option. I mean, there's no reason, they're not mutually exclusive. You can do both. You don't have to choose one or the other. If you work in a school, that's a whole one thing with logistical issues and kind of legal and all of this stuff. As an adult teacher, there are multiple routes, of course, that you can go down.
Yeah. And before we move on to that, I just wanted to say a little bit about my experience teaching kids, because if people are listening, they might want to know about that. I taught children in Japan, and surprisingly, Japanese children are very cheeky. They're very free with their children. There's not a lot of disciplining. And I absolutely loved it. And I found it utterly exhausting at the same time. You need to bring a lot of energy to the classroom and you will be tired at the end of the day. However, people are constantly asking me if they know of a teacher who can teach kids. And it's a reasonably well-paid area, I think. But we don't have a huge amount of experience with that.
No,
just leaving it there.
That's up to you all guys out there, I would say. I would say yes. Pick one or the other, or even both. I wouldn't worry too much about it, really. The world is quite flexible. I think you can be quite flexible, particularly these days with everything being online. You don't have to decide to go into a school or go into someone's office. Everything's on video conferencing these days, so there's lots more flexibility, which is one of the
you could even start teaching Spanish people outside of Spain. Theoretically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're talking about going into specialized English teaching, and why is that you should have that in mind even when you start doing general English teaching?
Yeah. I started off with general English teaching, as most people do. But after a couple of years, I was like, okay, I think I might want to do something else. Unfortunately, the wages haven't really got any better in 20 years, I would say. And the post-COVID demand was very high, and it has tailed off a little bit slightly. There is work available, but I think the way forward, really the way to go, if you particularly have an area of interest, is to go into teaching a subject that you're either knowledgeable in or you have an interest in. And I think really to get a better wage and to find it more interesting for you, and to have more opportunities, I really think this is the future, and there are a lot more kind of opportunities out there for you to move into that. There are plenty of opportunities for that once you've perhaps got a little bit of general English teaching under your belt.
I totally underline that and agree with it. I have always mixed English teaching with being a freelancer, and I like the flexibility it gave me, but my wage, which was around 20 euros an hour as a freelancer, we won't get too much into the Spanish tax system. Which is very
let's not.
If you're on a contract, you might be earning less an hour, but paying less taxes. But that wage, it just hasn't shifted in years and years and years. And so if you're looking, you really need to be looking to do this with an eye to moving on into specialization. And so the first sort of general thing you could think about specialization, which is teaching people, is it the Cambridge certificate and university entry? You do that, right?
Yeah, I do. I have people that approach me and to do some kind of higher level certificate, like a B1 or a B2 or a C1, all of these levels that they have, because they want it for work. They want to go to university to study something particular. They just want to prove that they can do it. And that with exam coaching, you can charge a little bit more money because it's certainly more focused. The more focused you are, the more specialist that is, really the higher value it is. And I think the more that you can charge a reasonable rate. So I've done that for quite a few students as well. Also university entry. Not in general. I don't do it in general. I do it for people who are applying to courses, particularly in the UK, for arts and heritage management, museum studies, cultural studies, this kind of thing in my field. And they want to know, what kind of thing will they have to do? What do the interviewers want to know? How to write a good application with both a mix of your qualifications and the fact you have a practical understanding, I think.
Yeah, so you need to look at, you've probably been working in the UK and you have a professional profile there. How is that going to be applicable to working as a specialized English teacher? Do you know other specialized English teachers and how they're using their skills? They're repurposing their skills.
Yes, no, I'm in a sort of network of teacher entrepreneurs, kind of as they're called these days. And there's literally anything. I've come across people who are teaching English for people in the wine industry, English for Brazilian stockbrokers, I want to say, and English for yacht crews. So anything you can think of, any specialization, there is a market for it. There is a demand out there. I do, of course, museums, people, archaeologists, cultural management, arts, etc., because that was my field. And really, people want to know that you know what you're talking about. Yes, you can have your general English skills. You can know a bit about English grammar and the structure of the language and how it works. That can be learned. You add the extra layer on top of that of your professional experience or even your particular interest. And you can pick a hobby, English for tennis players, why not? You could probably do that. I would really suggest that you choose something that you like. There's no point teaching English to a group of people that you just don't find interesting. That's it. Even if you think it's going to be well paid, you're not going to stick at it. You're going to be pretty bored. So I loved working in museums in the cultural sector, and I enjoyed teaching the English. So it makes perfect sense to put these two things together. And you work for yourself. You can choose your own time and choose your own.
Yes, this is one of the things that's really great about English teaching is it's a social job. And I often felt as if my students became my friends. Sorry, I'm backtracking a little bit, but saying this is a good kind of rewarding thing about the job. And the grammar you mentioned, I think that's a good point to say, get your first year under your belt. Because you need to be absolutely rock solid on grammar. I'm Gen X, as is Claire. And I wasn't taught grammar properly at school. I had to learn it afterwards. And since being an English teacher actually led to me becoming an editor and a writer because I knew my grammar inside and out, unlike a lot of people of our generation. Luckily, I think younger people are being taught grammar properly, which is a big help when it comes to learning Spanish.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they will ask you. They will say, "Oh, is this a modal verb, or is this an example of the subjunctive?" And you're like, "Let me go and check that for you." So obviously, you're not expected to memorize all aspects of grammar, but it really, yes, I would really suggest, because you're going to get confused if you don't know this stuff, and then your confusion and lack of confidence will come across to your students. And if you can explain yourself well, it's a skill. It's a skill like anything that is taught and gets better with repetition.
And the important thing is not to say, I don't know, and panic. is to say, I'm not entirely sure of this. Let me take a note. And if you can take an educated guess, take an educated guess.
Yes.
And take a note and do get back to the student.
Absolutely, 100%. What you can say, and this isn't a lie, it's actually true. Oh, it's a little bit more complicated than that. I've done lessons on the use of the word at and an, and the use of the word the. This is pages and pages and pages in a grammar book, because these words are actually really complicated. So you can say, oh, actually, it's not as simple as this or this. It's, as with English, there are rules and there are exceptions, and it's better to write them a little thing to explain to them. And then in the next class, you go, okay, did you read this? Do you have any questions? Let's go through it in a real world scenario. But no, don't worry about being some sort of grammar expert. I'm certainly no grammar expert at all. But just have a few basic resources. One of the great things about everything being online these days is that you can very quickly find some wonderful resources quickly and send it to your students. Yeah.
And you were talking about students having confidence in you. And this is especially true when you go into being an expert English teacher in a specialized subject. How do you get people to have confidence in you and build these relationships to find the students that you need? Because you're freelance, right? So you're having to do a lot of networking.
Yeah.
How does that work?
I mean, I mainly use LinkedIn. Because it's a sort of professional network. All the people in my sector tend to be on there and post regularly. So I do a really good profile, give all your experience, show examples, and the post, I do a real mix of posting content and things like that. It's not just, here's how to learn 5 phrasal verbs about museums. It's more like, I visited this exhibition and I want to think about this subject. It reminds me of the time when I did this project at work. So just show that you're interested in your subject. So show that you're actively doing things within your subject. Show that you have experience. Show that you know people within your network. It's really just showing that you're a specialist in your field. I don't particularly, at the moment, sell myself as a straight English teacher. It's more to do the fact that I know I'm interested in my area, and then the people will come to you, and then you have a chat. And then a little later, you could maybe evolve to having more English language posts. But it's kind of like, you're not teaching them English. You're teaching them how to be more confident in their job. You're teaching them how to communicate with their colleagues or whatever it is that they want to do. That's what you're selling them. You're selling them a better life, really.
And this is really important in Spain because a lot of the Spanish economy is tourism. That the good and the bad of that. And a lot of Spanish people work in heritage and are giving tours in English, and they need someone to sort of coach them so that they can give a polished performance.
Absolutely. Spanish tourism is kind of going down several different routes at the moment. There is the sort of gastronomy, the food-related culture, and patrimonio, as we call it here, the heritage. Spain has amazing sites from thousands and thousands of years of history, but hasn't particularly marketed itself well in the past for places outside of Barcelona, the coast, and maybe bits of Madrid. It is getting much better at that. And people within the industry who I'm, chatting to are very keen to get that message out. There's lots of archaeological work going on. Museums are expanding all the time. And of course, they need their content in English. The universal language of tourism and really history, to be honest, is English. So, yeah.
Yeah, and things are improving a huge amount, because I remember when I first arrived, information in museums was written in this horrible Spanglish that somebody's cousin who was high up in the museum had sort of put their hand up and said, I speak fluent English, and they were full of beep.
Yeah.
So
it's better. It's getting much better. Yeah. There is still a little tendency in some of the older places, I would say, is to regurgitate somebody's PhD onto a wall. Text panels are a little bit too long, I would say. Some of the text is a little bit too complicated, but no, it is getting better. And certainly the big museums in the major centres are obviously having their content written by people who know what they're talking about, and it's pretty good. But they are trying to get better, and there's lots of room for improvement. And they're making.
I think the most egregious ones, it's still true to this day, is anytime I go to a cathedral, they translate the Spanish almost word for word into English, and they hire a native speaker to read this gobbledygook out.
Yeah.
And it's just, my mum was crying with laughter when she was listening to one, because it's really, really awful. But now in the bigger museums, I have to brag a little bit, because I know that we both know the voice of the Prado.
Oh, yes.
Which is Lance.
Yes, Lance. Fantastic.
Who I'm hoping to have on. Has a lovely, rich, sonorous voice. And he wouldn't stand for that at all.
No. There is... this is in the museums world as a whole. We are taught in the museum, certainly in the UK, you can't use a lot of jargon. People don't know what these big words mean. And also, they don't really care. So here, there's still a little bit of kind of listing lots of kind of like big sounding, fancy sounding words that actually most Spanish people don't know what they mean either. But it is better. Not dumbing down. It's but just to do it in an accessible way that is for everybody. And if you want to have more technical stuff, great, have it somewhere else. You don't need to, have it on the wall. People just want a good, well-written explanation without too much having to look in a dictionary at the same time.
And you can help people with this, Spanish people who are trying to put across a message in a more accessible way to tourists.
Yes, exactly. I do have I had a couple of students who are tour guides, one who worked in a French chateau and one who worked in Naples, actually, which is somewhere I still want to go and visit. And I was just kind of like, yeah, you're telling a story. This is what you're doing. You're telling them a story. They want to know about the people, the exciting events that happened, what they're looking at. I'm a kind of person that likes to put things into a physical context. That's why I studied archaeology, I think, is it's not some abstract concept that happened a long time ago. This is the object. This is the building. What you're looking at is what they would have seen. And to have that connection with the past and the present is something that a great storyteller is able to do.
I'm 100% in agreement with you. As a tour guide, I have to give myself a little plug here.
Yes.
The worst tours I see are when people just rattle off dates and names.
Oh, nobody really cares.
No.
Honestly,
people want to understand how Spain's past informs its present.
Yes.
And that gives them a richer experience when they come on holiday.
Yeah. Of course, you want the framework. You want to know what century you're in and maybe what's happening in England at the same time as this. You've got, here's the thing from Philip II. Don't forget, he was basically the King of England, right? People forget that. So, yeah, you've got linking, and people go, oh, right, yeah. He was so link things together that people will have a kind of a spark in their brain. Oh yeah, that's that guy. Okay, get that. But you can't list off a list of dates or a list of, like I say, complicated jargon or long Spanish names of dukes, because people don't remember anyway. They just don't remember. And in the end, it doesn't really matter. They just want to know a rollicking good story.
And if you want to read some of Claire's rollicking good history stories, she has a wonderful blog, which is Confused Heap of Facts, right?
Yes, I know it's a bit of a strange name. I found this this quote from again, I can't remember the Duke's name. Doesn't matter. Lord Stanhope, I think, or something like that. He said, "History is but a confused heap of facts." And I thought, well, that's a good name for a blog, and also it means that I can get away with jumping around and saying quite random things. So I've been doing that for about a year or so now, and things about Madrid, a couple of things about Britain in there as well. And whenever I go somewhere in Spain, I always write a little piece trying to have a little bit of history of the place.
I love your blog because I've completely boxed myself into Madrid. Mine is The Making of Madrid, and I very rarely stray from Madrid or go national. But you talk about all different kinds of things. Like I remember once you went to a village and there were photographs up of all the people in the village.
Oh yeah, Mogaraz in excuse my Spanish pronunciation, in Salamanca region. Yes, there's a project in the 60s, and they had these paintings based on photographs of all the people from the village. Just hundreds and hundreds of them all over this village. It's kind of weird and kind of eerie, but very, very cool. So things like that. And a few months ago, I was in Alhambra, Aragon, which is a thermal spa town. A lot of people don't know Spain has thermal spas, has thermal waters. So I talked about that sort of culture of the sort of water is life and things like that, particularly in somewhere like Spain. So I like to go somewhere and find some extremely random angle, hence confused heap of facts.
And it's great as well because it shows your enthusiasm for Spain. I feel like, I'm very much here for life now, and I sometimes forget this sort of fresh eye for the country. And then I see you're all over the country, exploring things and finding out things that I didn't know existed, which is always really exciting. What drew you to Spain?
Well, it was a bit of a strange tale. I've always wanted to live abroad. I've always loved traveling. And my partner and I always had an idea that we would go to a different country. And we're like, oh yeah, one of those things, la la la. And then Brexit happened. And literally the day after Brexit, we were like, my boyfriend started a spreadsheet of where could we go, what could we do, cost of living, da da da. I'd already started the English language kind of teaching at this point. I'd already started doing a bit of volunteer work. So I said, okay, we can do that. That's something we can do. Where's a country not too far away? Culture isn't crazily radically different. Language isn't too difficult to understand. Spain. Spain ticks all the boxes. It has a big market for adult English teaching still. Their education system in the past for people of our age wasn't so great in English, shall we say. So there's a big market there. So and then in autumn of 18, we went, okay, Spain, Madrid's in the middle. It's the capital. Packed up our house, rented our house out, quit our jobs. I was sad to leave my job, but I was still in touch with my friends there. And here we are, 5 years later, 6 years later almost. Yeah.
The thing about the spreadsheet made me laugh because I think Sergio and I did exactly the same thing. You guys had a spreadsheet of Madrid versus Barcelona.
Yes, I think, yeah.
And that's always the big choice for people.
Yeah.
And I would say that there isn't one answer for everyone.
No.
What swung it for us was that Sergio has a lot of friends here and we love live music, and there's a big concert scene here. Barcelona tends to get all the big festivals, big music festivals. And we've traveled to see Sonar, but it's really good for concerts. And then I couldn't be happier that I chose it now because there's a lot of tension about over-tourism, I think, at the moment in Barcelona.
Yes, so understandably so.
And in Madrid, there's tension, but it's not developed into hostility against foreigners. So, well, I thought maybe a difficult subject for another day. But what swung it for you about Madrid?
I mean, I think because I'd visited here, I'd done a couple of language volunteer programs in the past, one of which was based in Madrid, and I really liked it. I thought it is the capital that's the sort of center of the sort of business world, and I knew that I would be teaching adults, probably in some sort of professional context, and it's in the middle-ish of Spain. So yeah.
Oh yeah, the transport links.
Yeah, I thought, well, I love Barcelona, don't get me wrong, but I thought, no, I think Madrid is better and it's more connected. And also, neither of us are particularly beach people. I like the sea, but I don't have the sort of the urges a lot of people do, which is lovely, to live next to the sea. So yeah.
We've got public pools. That's enough for me.
And we have a river. She says.
The river, yeah.
Having segue into
That's a great segue. I was thinking how to do it. So the river is your thing. So why did you start writing a tour about the river?
Yeah, it's sort of accidentally become my pet project, my baby almost, as it were. When we first came here, the accommodation that we just ended up renting was in Usera. which is a wonderful district to the south of the river. So we love it. All about Nuceira.
I also live in Nuceira, and it's the best place to live.
It's the greatest. And then I sort of quickly discovered walking around, oh, there's a river and there's this wonderful new park they did about 10 years ago. I'd love to find out more. I'd love to do a tour. Did a quick search. Nothing. No tours. Virtually no tourist literature. Very hard to find out information. Lots of things along the way, which, they don't tell you anything. So I'm like, okay. And in my very practical way that I am, I said, okay, if I want to do a good tour of the river, I'll just write one myself then. So I did lots of research. I was in the excellent Nuceira library, finding lots of documents and things like that, and monuments along the way, and it evolved into one big tour. Now it's two smaller ones. And yeah, I'm very much the kind of, if you don't find it, do it yourself.
And I went to the prototype tour when she did it, and it was very big.
Yes,
and it took us a long time, but it was marvelous. I really, really enjoyed it, and I found out lots of things about the river that I hadn't known. And we don't want to give away Clare's talk for free, so what we'll do is give some of the highlights, and maybe one of the things we can talk about initially is the prehistoric history of the river.
Yes, this is it about Madrid. There's bits of early history. I think a lot of people think it kind of magically arrived fully formed in 1561 when it became a capital, but actually there was things going on well before then. And over 300,000 years ago, millions of years ago, because the river is a very old piece of land. And I really start with talking about mammoths. They have found 20 woolly mammoths from the Ice Age, so about 115 or so thousand years ago, in the middle of Madrid, which kind of sounds kind of crazy, really. People are always surprised that history goes back that far. That's not a strange thing to say. And actually, it's not just about the medieval or the golden age history. There are things that go back to really before humans, really.
Yeah. And then humans came, and Madrid became the capital. But during the golden age, it wasn't very well respected, was it, the river?
Well, throughout most of its history, really, it's been a bit not very well respected. There were, it was used a lot, of course, there were some small mills on there for, growing crops next to it. This Philip II's project to link it up to Lisbon, which a little teaser for one of my tours there. But no, it's again, and still today, really, if you kind of look at any kind of blog or any information about the river, people go, oh, Madrid doesn't really have a river. It's like 2 centimeters deep. It's a bit rubbish. And as a bit of a champion of the historical underdog, I feel like, no, it's actually kind of nice. And the new park that's along there is lovely. There are some lovely things to see. There's a lot of great wildlife. So yeah, I'm a bit of a champion for the Manzanares.
But didn't Lope de Vega slag it off?
Oh yeah, that's Lope de Vega.
Because they made a big bridge, a big spectacular bridge for it, and he said something like it was a bridge in front of a river.
Yes, yeah, he said the Segovia Bridge, which was built during his lifetime, and apparently he looked at it and said, well, they should either sell the bridge or buy a bigger river. Something else that he said. But yes, it's not, it's not the Tagus, it's not the Danube, it's not one of the world's great rivers. But there is, it's got a certain charm to it.
Well, if that's whetted your appetite, you should go to Voice Map and buy Clare's tour, or you can buy Clare herself. Well, her services.
That's worse.
Sorry, that came out wrong. She can take you along the river and give you more insight than if you were just listening to her tour, which is also wonderful. But yes, go on to Voice Map and get Clare's tour. I love the river anyway, even now, because it's my escape when I'm feeling stressed. That's why I was saying one of the lovely things about living in Nuceira is I take my bike and I just cycle down the river, and I get out into the countryside really quickly.
Yes, you can. I mean, the central section, which is the sort of the canalized bit, the kind of bit that's been modernized, central sort of 5 kilometers or so. But if you go further north, you can get all the way up to the mountains, really. If you go further south, there's a beautiful natural park, past Vallecas and things like that. So you can, in the city, feel like you're kind of not in the city, really. And it is a little bit quieter than some other places. And you can go and sit and have a chill and watch the birds and that's lovely. Yeah.
And if you're in Madrid and you don't have a lot of time, but you've heard about the river, which place in particular do you think people should just go and see?
Yeah, I would. My first tour starts at the Matadero, which is the old abattoir and slaughterhouse. Doesn't sound very nice. It actually is. It closed in the 90s. It's turned into like a cultural centre. So there's some spectacular kind of brick buildings. There's kind of art centres and there's exhibitions and there's music and there's concerts. And then you can go through this building, the series of buildings, really. It's like a mini city, really. And then you're straight onto the river. And you have a couple of nice bridges and you can sit on the green space and watch the river go by. So if you only have an hour or so, I think that would be the perfect plan.
Great. So if you've listened to the end of this podcast, you get a little treat because you get to hear Claire's favourite Spanish word and her favourite hidden corner of Madrid. Okay, so Claire, what is your favourite Spanish word or phrase?
I think my favorite Spanish phrase is a little simple one. It's just madre mia, because it's such a great kind of expletive. It's not particularly strong or bad. It's sort of slight exasperation. And I love the fact we don't really have the equivalent in English. Can you imagine saying, "Oh, my mother," every time you got frustrated? I don't think my mum would like that very much for a start. And it's just kind of, it's great. I think it's just kind of slightly kind of friendly, but kind of exasperating, which I just enjoy hearing on the bus all the time, which I do.
Yeah, people sort of might even say it to you in the street like strangers, Well, that's part of the reason why I like Spain is, you often get strangers talking to you and something surprising happens and people go, Madre mia.
Or like, I'm not, yeah, because that's quite a sort of softer one, but also kind of hostia.
Hostias.
Yeah, it's like the host kind of thing. And again, it's sort of weirdly religious. It's obviously lost that particular religious meaning in the same way that we say, oh, God, or Jesus, when we're kind of a bit frustrated. But it's just so kind of Catholic. I just enjoy.
What's your Madrid secret?
Well, of course, if you've listened to the main show, you know how interested in history and culture and museums that I am. It's going to be a museum. And it is the Museum of the San Isidro and the Origins of Madrid. So if you want to know what Madrid was like, well before all the Golden Age and your Philip II's and your big palaces, I would go to this museum. It talks about all the prehistory, all the prehistoric animals like mammoths and elephants in there, from Roman history, Iron Age Roman history. And it's got a huge mosaic floor found from one of the Roman villas here. And the secret is in the basement, they have open storage. So you can see the mammoth tusks, lots of lovely Neolithic pottery, bones of gigantic animals that used to be on here. And that's my top secret tip for you. And it's free.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And they have a lovely little courtyard. I think it's a Renaissance courtyard that you can relax in. That's opposite the Chapel of San Isidro. This is really debatable. San Isidro has lived in many places according to legend and no one quite knows. But it also might be it was definitely the Vargas family's house.
Yes. San Isidro didn't live there because he, like you say, he's born outside really of the city of Madrid. Maybe he was in Carabanchel for a bit, but there's so many different he certainly didn't live there.
I think he could have been there because that was when he was alive when the Christian war was being made. So, but all we know about him is this ark with pictures on and a document as well. So it's all open to interpretation.
Yeah, so obviously he probably would have gone to the house to visit his master or whatever, absolutely. But yeah, it's
they have the magical well as well.
Yeah.
There's another magical well in the library of the Vargas, which is just a few streets away.
Yeah, I think they said it's unlikely that well is the well because but
well, it's unlikely.
Well, the whole thing is unlikely anyway.
What was the history? What's the well mystery?
Well, I think one day that they have, so San Isidro was married to a lady called Maria, and they have one son called Ian, I think that's how you'd pronounce that. And he's messing around and plays and falls down a well. So obviously the first thing that Maria does is sort of shouts for her husband and starts praying and panicking. And then Isidro comes along and they both start praying. And then the water magically rises up through the well. And little Ian is just sitting on the top, la la la, splashing away, having a great time, none the worse. And that is one of the many, over 400 miracles that Isidro is said to perform as well. And if you go to the Toledo Bridge, next to the Manzanares River, there's some beautiful kind of 18th century stone carvings of San Isidro and little Ian sitting cheekily on top of this well.
Oh, and we've both seen San Isidro himself. We've seen his mummified corpse.
Yeah, that was a thing. Yeah. Yes, in the church in Toledo.
Toledo.
It's a lovely church. It is not on display all the time, I should say. Only on special occasions. This was the 400th anniversary of his canonization.
Yes. He conveniently became canonized just after Madrid became the capital of Spain.
Tourism is tourism.
We needed
we needed a bit of protection, I think, definitely.
This is many years after we knew about San Isidro.
Oh, it's 500-600 years after he actually lived. Yeah.
And the body is really interesting because the last time they opened the coffin was in the 80s, I think. Only the king has a key. And I think people were kind of abusing the body for relics. There's some story about handmaid biting off his toes.
Yeah. Well, he's only got like one tooth left. I think he pulled his teeth out. So yes, it does look like a mummy. It has the sort of dried, dark skin that you see in these mummified bodies, corpses that you see in Egypt and bogs, in Europe, kind of thing. So yeah, it's kind of an odd one, but it was an interesting thing to see.
Well, Claire has a really, really good blog post on San Isidro, which I recommend you look at. And that's all for now, because I expect I'll talk about San Isidro again sometime in the pod.
He's such a great subject.
Okay, thank you, Claire.
Thank you.